behind us, so we're actually back at it at our usual time slot like last week. So hopefully we'll keep this one 2 p.m. Eastern on Thursdays for the next 60 minutes. I am Doug Kazarian alongside Analytics Capper, also known as Albert Nguyen. So Albert, good to be with you, man, from the snowy Dallas.
Yes, man, it's crazy. I'm looking outside my window right now. It's actually several inches of fresh powder here in Texas. I just took the girls out to play, so it was a good time. I'm excited, man. Snowing, drinking, and betting on sports. Like you can't beat that right now. That's a trifecta
Yeah,
in life.
yeah, it's like Christmas Day kind of. Remind me because I know Vegas has had some snow like once every handful of years. Dallas, like, what's the snow history there?
It's similar to that. I would say once every 3 to 4 years, but when it does snow, it's like this. It's like an anomaly. So it goes down in bunches, and then it'll last for like two, three. The last time I think it was 3 years ago, we called it Ice Mageddon or Dalaska, and we had ice basically on our streets for a full week straight, and that was crazy. So
Well, here we are with
when it snows here, Doug, I'm sure it's a similar thing with Vegas. City shuts down, all the school districts are closed, nobody goes to work, so everyone's just at home, cabin fever.
yeah, we're not prepared for these types of situations, such an outlier situation, but not to trivialize weather, extreme weather, because that's what's going on in Southern California right now in Los Angeles area. That's where I'm from. Just it's ridiculous what's happened to many of my friends. My family's okay, but my friends and lost homes and just places I've spent so much time are just down, burnt to the ground. So just really crazy thing that's still ongoing. And we saw the Lakers game postponed with the Hornets tonight.
Hmm.
We'll see what happens with the other NBA games in LA the rest of the weekend. The LA Kings were postponed last night, and
Hmm.
there's two football games involving LA teams. One's on the road on Saturday, the other's at home on Monday. We'll see what transpires. I can't imagine the fans. I mean, that's why these games were postponed, the ones in LA, because I don't know what fans have the ability to go, just given that everyone's taking care of each other right now in the city. But we will offer some distraction in that regard. Big football stretch that you alluded to, 5 straight days of playoff slash postseason games. And last week we were pretty solid. We swept the entire hour, so that always bodes well. It doesn't happen every day, but that does go well. So we did well there. Let's try to keep it moving. These college football playoff games have been on the board for a while now, and it's just one game tonight, one game tomorrow night. Penn State, Notre Dame. We've seen a little line movement here with the over under coming down from 47.5 to 45. And there's some fluctuation in who's favored. But Notre Dame's a kind of one right now, 1.5 at DraftKings and some other shops. Do you have an opinion here? I mean, I agree with the way the under has moved. I'm still lean that way at 45, 45 and a half. Any opinion here on this game?
Yeah, so for those who are jumping on the first time, me and Doug, we talk all the time offline about these positions and these bets that we look at. And one of the things that I mentioned to him last week was Notre Dame. I actually think Marcus Freeman might not be a great X's and O's guy, but he is really good at delegating what needs to be delegated out, and he focuses on the players there at his school. And I think because of that, I consider him a really good coach. So tonight you have Marcus Freeman, who I like as a coach, CEO mentality. He delegates everything out. And then you have Big Game James, who has this moniker of not doing well in these big situations. But the line is -1, -1.5. Doug, you know where I'm going. I'm not a big short favorites guy in general, anyways. I like Penn State tonight. I think they have shown more, in my opinion, and they've obviously played tougher competition all year round.
I agree. I don't love it. I actually have Penn State in a teaser up to
Mhm.
7.5. Now, I think it's important to discuss at least the concept of college teasers. Very rarely will I bet a teaser in college, like one or two a season. I think Army Navy has value
Mhm.
because the over under is so low. I don't tease the over under, but I tease the side when a game has a low over under, meaning every half point matters. So if you get a fixed rate, because that's essentially what it is, it's a fixed price. of a buying 12 half points, right? That's what a 6 point teaser is. So just think about it. You walk into a store, and if you're allowed to adjust something, you know, $50 off, you gonna apply it to something that's like $51, right? You're not gonna apply it to something that's $500 because you'd rather apply like a 5% discount, whatever it is, right? So, or 15%. So I just think there's value in teasing. I think a Penn State Notre Dame matchup with an over under 45 that I feel is going to be a one score game that's going to come down to the end. We know Notre Dame doesn't really beat itself, right? We saw that in the Georgia game. I agree with you. Marcus Freeman's very well coached. I think the team reflects a well coached team. Like
Yep.
no stupid penalties.
Yep.
They're connected. The mistakes, the sloppiness that Georgia had with the jumping off sides on the fake fake hard count and things like that. Like I don't think you get that with Notre Dame. I think Georgia since all season's been sloppy, unreliable, bad in first halves, things along those lines. Notre Dame just buttoned up, but I think Penn State has impressed me too. I think the Big Ten's the best conference. How they came back in the Big Ten title game, I think, was the game that resonated with me most. So Penn State will not win it all if it's like a best of five series with each round, but I think in a one game situation they can win the championship.
I
I think
love the
their
way.
upside is better than I thought it was going in big game James you mentioned. So I like the plus 7.5. I think at DraftKings, if you can adjust 6 points, again, fixed costs, getting to 7.5, and then maybe with an NFL game, or even I wouldn't do the 6 down to 0 with Ohio State or 5, but I do think there's value with a teaser plus 7.5.
Yeah, I love the way you put it in the fact that in a 5 game series or even in a 3 game series, you're not going to put your hard earned money on James Franklin, right? But in a 1 game situation where he has all week to prepare and the players know exactly who they're going up against, I think from a talent standpoint, Doug, you mentioned that Big Ten has been the best conference all year round, and some of the wins that Penn State has this year has been very, very impressive. And I think they're going to carry that momentum into this season. A couple of things I do want to mention: we do have our free trials. If you click the link in the comments there, you'll have my free trials as well as Doug's free trial. Maybe one day me and Doug would do something together and make it exciting there. Another thing I wanted to point out is for those who are jumping on for the first time, we're going to start bringing on guests. So maybe next week or the week after, we're going to bring on a couple guests. So if you have any recommendations, if you want to see anybody and listen to them, join the show and help analyze some of these spots, let us know in the comments below. Let us know in our DMs. That would be awesome. But I do like, heading back into this game, I do like Penn State. And it's similar to how, we were talking last week, and I was on the fence between Notre Dame and Georgia. The more I looked at it, the more I listened to you. I like Notre Dame first half and full game. I'm in the same boat here tonight. I like Penn State first half and full game. I think at worst that goes 1-1.
I haven't thought about the first half because the last game was more of a fade of Georgia first half because I've been doing even in the Big Ten, SEC title game. I did that with Texas. I think Georgia's been sloppy. I have no opinion. A couple things I do want to mention: the illness or flu bug or whatever reports are that it's kind of hit its way to the Notre Dame locker room. As of now, it looks like reserves and maybe special teams, but you just don't know. That's never a good thing.
Yeah.
But that could be some of the late steam influenced. I think just putting a bow on the James Franklin thing, like I do think he's too conservative in vanilla in big games, but a lot of the criticism of Franklin is really two major things. One is he was like the second or third highest paid coach in college football for a while, behind Saban and like Harbaugh. So there was resentment and just ridiculous. If he was like the 11th highest paid, like no one would have cared. So just the fact that he was close to Saban in the rank, whatever. And then number two is that, you're every year you're in the Ohio State, like you have to look at Ohio State compete for championships. Michigan wins it all. Michigan's right there. So I just think it's the proximity and the rivalry to teams that are winning it all. But look what he did with Vanderbilt. That team was dog crap right after. I mean, he took like a 2-win program. It was like 6 wins. That's coaching. I think getting Penn State to this point and getting better every year, like, could he be better in some big games and maybe some fourth down? Yeah, of course. But a lot of coaches could be better in certain small aspects. So overall, I think he's a good coach. And he's done really well. I like that I frankly, I like that he likes to cover in big spread games because he knows the boosters pay the bills. But all in all, he's a good coach. He's just not like legendary like Saban, and that's almost often in the conversation. I mean, the guy had to deal with Harbaugh, Urban Meyer, and Saban sort of in his periphery a lot, and that's just a lot to ask. So I think they've stayed the course. They've done really well. I think they have the better quarterback in this game, so that's
They
why
do.
I really like him in a teaser.
And honestly, again, just to end this out, James Franklin took the Penn State team out of, all of the off the field issues in the early
Mhm.
2010s, right? And made them relevant and now a powerhouse, school. So there's not many negative things you can say about James Franklin. It's one of those situations where people are going to get off his back once he wins, and it could be this year. So we'll see. I think both Doug and I are in agreement tonight that we like Penn State. Doug more in the teaser, so you're gonna get more of a touchdown there, which is great value in my opinion. That's a good look. But I like Penn State straight up +1 or +1.5. And honestly, at this point, it's basically pick the winner. And I think Penn State's gonna move on.
I do too. There is a prop out there in case you want to get a little frisky to pick to which conference will produce the champion, the overall national champion. And Big Ten is -230,
Mm,
or 240, I believe. So Ohio State's minus a buck 30 in most shops right now to win it all. You do the 230, 240, you get the Penn State component. Could Penn State beat Texas? I guess that's what you're betting on. Yeah, I think they could.
yep.
So it's a little rich, but one thing to keep in mind, let's say, just hypothetically for people to learn in this situation, if there is late steam tonight, let's just say there's an avalanche of sharp money that comes in late. Penn State win. Let's say Penn State goes off -1, -1.5. It's hypothetical. The derivative markets, the domino effect of that usually is slow to move. So that Big Ten, you might be able to pick that off as a value play if you get both favorite. So that could be part of something to grab, or just a future in Penn State, or over under Penn, Big Ten wins 1.5, whatever it is, right? So just keep that in mind when you see late steam. Usually the other trickle down sort of betting opportunities do not adjust as quickly. Excuse me, and that's a way to jump on the and snag a little value.
So Doug, if we jump over to the other semifinal game, and I'm not gonna speak too much on this because I'm a little biased. I'm a big Longhorns fan. Been a fan since basically out the womb with my parents going there. My wife goes there. Um, yeah, Texas family through and through. But am I wrong to say that Texas hasn't shown that they've played up to their capabilities all year long? I think what they've won, like even the games that they win, like last week against Arizona State, they barely win. They haven't really performed up to their talent level, and it could be a potential buy low spot for Texas when Ohio State is riding so high. They're peaking at the right time. I'm gonna defer to you on this.
So I think the market is adjusted too much, but not enough for me to bet Texas,
Mm,
because maybe Ohio State's just that good. Because I do think, and we forget, that teams are allowed to improve. Teams are allowed to change, especially in college when kids are so much younger in their career. But like Denver in the NFL, the Broncos and Commanders have rookie quarterbacks. Who they are at the end of the season is very different than who they were the first couple months, because the learning curve is so steep with such an important position, right? So in college, teams are allowed to get better, and I think Ohio State's kind of a lot better than they were at the beginning of the season, right? They were
mhm.
getting by on certain things, like Jeremiah Smith's like a totally different. The guy's a freshman, right? So guys at the end of the
Monster.
career, or sorry,
What
end
a
of the
monster.
season, they're not really freshmen, right? And Chip Kelly's probably a lot better with this Ohio State lineup,
Mm,
just knowing what he has with Will Howard. He kind of knows the players better, right?
mm.
That Michigan loss can catapult them, and we've seen this happen in a lot of sports. we've seen wild card teams make a run in the NFL often. It's teams who get hot at the end of the season, right? And I just worry that, if I were to bet Texas, that just I'm drawing dead. Now, sharp money has come in on the dog at 6.5 and 6. I respect that, obviously, but I'm just not ready. But my read of the numbers, like the look ahead line was Texas -2, I think. But I guess my concern is, and I was on ASU against Texas. I loved them. And my concern for Texas, I thought the win at A&M was really a good win. I mean, just dealing with the crowd, 13th man, all that stuff. But other than that, what's their best win this year?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. Like, I mean, they beat up some teams that were not good, right? Like Oklahoma and Michigan. And again, not everyone did that. So give hats off to them. But their run in the SEC, like they played Florida when they had the bad quarterback. Yeah, they beat Vanderbilt by 3 points. Lost both Georgia games, beat Kentucky, congratulations, beat Arkansas by 10. The SEC was down this year. They escaped ASU, albeit leading comfortably at halftime, but Ewers is hurt. The offense isn't explosive as one would think with Sark, even though the rushing attack got going against Clemson. I think the defense has vulnerabilities. And ASU, I mean, look, they had a halfback pass and stuff like that, but Clemson moved the ball. I think with the right coaching and prep, I think Chip Kelly should be able to dial up some stuff on this team. Big Ten's the best team in the best conference in the country. I'm not in a rush to grab the points with a team that is a little on the shaky side. And frankly, Sark dropped the ball last year in the postseason too.
Yeah.
So I think Ohio State's like the right team here, but I don't know if it's the right side just yet.
Yeah, that's what I mean by saying Texas hasn't really performed up to their talent level, and that includes players and coaches, right? And that includes red zone execution with Quinn. Who knows? I think we know from a off the field standpoint, if he shows out Friday night, he's probably going to enter the draft. If he doesn't do well, he's probably going to enter the transfer portal. So there's a lot of factors, right? That's a lot to kind of comprehend as a 21-year-old kid. And so when I say maybe Quinn hasn't performed up to where he is, maybe he's just not the player that I expect him to be. With that said, like when it all comes down, and I know Texas football like the back of my hand and the history behind it, you can make an argument Quinn's the third best quarterback ever for this university. Maybe top four if you want to be a little conservative, but he has an argument behind Vince and behind Colt that he's done more for this program, and he's produced more for this program individually than anybody else other than those two. I know we're losing Doug on the camera there, but
Oh no.
yeah, I do want to say just as from a fan standpoint, because I know there's a lot of Texas alumni that follow me. I don't hate Quinn. I think he can be a lot better, especially in the red zone. But he's brought this program and this school back to back, semifinals, and I can't hate him for that. It's definitely going to be Arch's team next year. There's no denying that. So hopefully Quinn plays well tonight, and we don't even have to worry about the transfer portal, because if he can beat this really really hot amazing Ohio State team with all this talent on the outside, it's going to be a big showing for Quinn. So yeah, just to put a bow on it, for college football, we both like Penn State. I think we like Ohio State to move on. We are just not as confident on Ohio State covering the number of 6. We do know a lot of sharp and professional money is on Texas at +6. We're going to move on to the NBA here. So Doug mentioned it earlier today, or earlier on the show, that the Lakers Hornets game has been postponed. For those who are not aware or are aware but not know the extent of what's happening in LA, I mean, thoughts and prayers over there. Doug, that's where he came from, but also, I went to school out there, so I have a lot of friends and so a lot of family out there. So hopefully everything's okay, but I do want to dive into the rest of the NBA slate. Doug, anything that sticks out to you with the remaining 6 or 7 games on the slate tonight?
Yeah, and sorry about the tech issue. I don't know what happened on my end, but it's happened in other shows. So, I mean, literally, I have a Ethernet cable plugged in, so it's not even a Wi-Fi thing. So, back at it. Thanks for holding down the fort there. Um, yeah, I really like this card in a lot of ways. So, where do I begin? All right, I'll begin with the game that is the most elaborate handicap. And I'm on the Orlando Magic, who are awesome against the spread, but I'm only on them first quarter, first half. I wouldn't be opposed to the game, which is so we call that the wheel, much like craps. So the first quarter, first half game. So the T Wolves are an immature team, just young, I think professionally immature, and they've had some issues. So lately they've been starting slow and like building themselves big deficits, and then coming back and winning. So the typical guy will do whatever he can get away with, right? So if you don't study for an exam and you do well on it, you're very unlikely to study for the next one, right? I just think the T Wolves, like if they start out slow or prep the same way and they start out, down at quarter or whatever, they don't care if they end up winning the game. So that's what's happened the last few games. So I'm just going to keep fading them in the first quarter, first half. It happened with the Pelicans and they came back and won. So I'm on the first quarter and first half against them until otherwise. Now, a little bit of it a hedge, and it's actually I swept all three in the Pelicans game. Is I'm also doing Ant over 3-pointers made. It's 3.5, like minus 130. There's just no defense because he's such a threat to drive given his athleticism. So you can't even like overplay the 3-pointer that much. And he's been just bombing threes lately. I think he's made 16 in his last 3 games combined. So I'm in no rush to go under this. I just think it's a really good opportunity to do all 3. And I did it in the last game, went 3-0. I'm going to do it again in this game. However, I have a fourth play. My favorite play on this game is Julius Randle under 1.5 made threes. Now, why is that? Well, he only shoots about 3 a game and 4 a game, and he's highly unlikely in my eyes he goes 2 for 4. Now, why do I think that? Certainly the flow of the game and the defense. I don't know enough if they're gonna what their game plan is. They're gonna say, yeah, let Randall beat us. We're gonna charge 3-pointers elsewhere, and maybe he gets like 8 attempts and I lose, right? But if you look at Orlando as a whole, we know their defense is awesome, but they hold teams under their 3-point attempts every single night out. So I'll just rip through their last 10 opponents. Brooklyn, 40 attempts a game, they allowed 30. Detroit, 37, allowed 29. Toronto, 33, allowed 29. Utah, 38, allowed 32. Knicks, 35, allowed 22. Now, no Towns in that game, so I throw that out. Miami, 38, allowed 30. Boston, 50, allowed 33. OKC, 38, allowed 31. So you get the point. It's like 7 to 10 3-pointers attempted less than their opponent averages on the season. Mm-hmm. So if you're less attempts, the defense is good. Like Miami in that game shot 50% from 3. All right, that's going to happen. But for the most part, these teams are also making a lot less. Therefore, most players are going to go under. Now, I look at DiVincenzo. He was another guy considered as 2.5 prop, but he's shooting like 6 to 7 a game. But Ant's one of those where he might attempt like 11 to 12, and he's got such athleticism and vertical, right, that maybe there's really – so I think Randall's the right guy to fade because he's not shooting that many anyway. So he's a guy I'm looking to fade, and maybe there's going to be more posted throughout the game, but I just think it's a really smart way to approach it and something I'm going to look into. If the over-under is under 200, okay? Yeah. So you have 230s in some games. This thing was 205, 201 earlier. Now it's 199.5. Well, earlier I talked about the domino effect and the trickle down of certain market adjusting. Will others adjust? So as this over under goes down, are the 3-pointer props going down? You would think they're correlated, right? Now Banchero's supposed to play. He's obviously known for offense. Maybe they don't have the same sort of determination on defense because it's such a us against the world when they're down. Banchero, Wagner, Suggs was hurt recently. So there's a lot in terms of that mindset. But I mean, all in all, like some of these guys should go under. Now, Naz Reid, that guy, that concerns me because he just stands there. But like McDaniels under stuff I'm all considering. So all these guys, I'm very curious to how it all plays out. But it is interesting after I said all that I'm playing Ant over. But I do think that's the one way where like Orlando doesn't cover the first quarter, first half.
And not having Suggs for Orlando, which would have been the primary defender on Ant, is a big loss defensively. So
Right.
he's going to be able to get to any of his spots. And if you watch Ant now for this season, he is different in the way that he looks for his three more than anything else. So he starts with the 3 point shot, the pull up, before he starts with driving or kicking out. So if you watch Ant, he's a player that's going to come in and have like a barrage of threes. Like he'll go a full quarter without shooting a three, and then he'll shoot like 6 threes in 4 minutes, right? So I can definitely see that, especially if he's hot. This is a game where I think it's under for a reason, even with Paolo being potentially coming back tonight. So that's a game that's honestly hard for me. I think the team that I'm going to be fading, Doug, because everyone expects them to right the ship. They have a transcendent superstar in Stephen Curry, but Golden State, even when they had that hot start, when they went like 8-2 in the first 2 weeks, I think I told you then I thought they were over outplaying their expectations. I think they are still a fade team today, and they're going up a team that I love so much from a ATS standpoint, Detroit Pistons. The only scary part here is it is Detroit on a second night of a back-to-back. They played Brooklyn yesterday. They had to travel back to Detroit today, and the Warriors are coming off a like embarrassing, disappointing loss against
Right.
Miami at home. So they've sat and stewed over this for 2 days. So that is a scary part of it because there's so much negative news around Curry, the Warriors, Kerr, and everything. But I just don't believe in this team at all. They have no size, they have no athleticism especially without Kaminga, and they're playing a team who I think Detroit Pistons are still underrated in the market. So I'm most likely gonna look towards Detroit in this one.
I understand the angle, not just the Warriors losing at home to the uh, Heat, but they also got the previous game lost by 30 at home to the Kings. Um, I like backing the Warriors as a dog. I like them
Mm,
really like as a big dog without Steph. I feel like they play well when you don't expect anything from them,
mm.
but when they are front runners, like you were saying after the hot start, they're good to fade. Man, it's they're a weird team right now, and but this Detroit team, they're kind of limited at like that front line with Jalen Duren, Hardaway Jr., and Tobias Harris. Not a lot of offense there. Now the backcourt is Cunningham and Beasley with Jaden Ivey out, and then they get some scoring off the bench here and there. But um, I actually kind of like the dog here just because it's a bigger
Interesting.
spot for them. I mean, this Detroit team's been awesome, like 1 8 of 10, and the only two losses are like totally respectable losses. So I understand the logic. I'm passing, but I think in the long run, from here and the rest of the season, if you bet on Detroit every game, that you're going to be profitable in
Are
my
you
eyes.
ready? Are you ready for my gross NBA play of the day?
Well, I think I like that gross play in the first quarter. So who is it?
It's gonna be the Phoenix Suns, man. It's gonna
Oh,
be
I
the
was
Phoenix Suns. They are 16-19. They're 12-23 against the spread. Everything, the whole world is against them right now. But they are playing Atlanta at home. We know Atlanta plays zero defense. So from an offensive standpoint, this could be a get right game for Phoenix. Obviously, if you have to cover 6 points, you still have to play a little bit of defense. But I think Phoenix here is the spot. They did just come off a 3 game road trip, so now they're finally back home, and I think it's going to be home cooking for them tonight. You mentioned it earlier with first quarter, first half, full game. Most likely, that's what I'm gonna look at. I think I'm just gonna post full game as the VIP play. But personally, I'm gonna be. I call it a trifecta. So first quarter, first full game, first half full game. So I like them to come out early and often, especially against Atlanta, who um, just had the buzzer beater half court shot from Trey to win. So it's I don't know. I again, Atlanta's one of those teams I can't really figure out. When they're hot, they're dropping 140 points and giving up 145. But hopefully Phoenix tonight gets it done defensively. I think that's what I want to see from them.
okay. So I have a lot to say on this because I just wrote a 500-page story for the New York Post on the Phoenix Suns, previewing tonight's game. So it hasn't posted online yet. I will send it out and tweet about it. But first things first, I love the spot in the first quarter. But I thought you were talking about a different game. We'll get to that game next.
Okay.
But the Suns are fascinating. So they have the single worst cover percentage in the NBA, right? And you mentioned that. But unlike a roulette wheel, there is market correction in sports. Like if you continue to stink against the spread, the market correction is going to occur, whereas the odds in roulette and craps are static. With that being said, tell that to Titans backers who continue to suck all year. So
I backed them again on the last week and lost. Yeah.
And they're a favorite too.
Yeah.
Phoenix is interesting. So what is their problem? I have felt watching their games, it's an attitude and aptitude. So the attitude is Kevin Durant's a great player, but he's already a multiple champion. He just wants the playoffs to start. He's not grinding every possession and going all out. And then they also have an aptitude issue where they're just not that good. So talking to some of the math guys, Bradley Beal's a disaster. Phoenix is minus 11.1 net rating per 100 possessions when he's on the court. And Nurkic is actually bad. I thought he was good. He's actually bad, and Plumlee's only like a little bit better. So whoever they have, so with this new starting lineup that they're now 1-1, both straight up against spread with, is really just rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic, because the guys are still getting the same amount of minutes, right? And maybe it lights a spark, which it did in the first game when they won by 10 at Philly. But then also there is a component where it's staggering the Stars' minutes. So when Beal's on the court, maybe he's more of a focal point, and Durant's on the bench, right? So maybe there's just a chemistry thing that it's better when they stagger the minutes, so to speak. Well, after they won by 10 in Philly and all that, they lose by 10 at the Hornets, and a team that had lost 17 of 18, and then they lose. So I think there might be a spark tonight. I actually have Suns first to 10 as my favorite play on this game, because to your point, flat spot for Atlanta, and also first to 10 is before Bradley Beal gets in the game. So it is a net, it's an edge play in theory, right? Because with all these, whether it's first to 10, first to 20, first quarter, first half, they're all commensurate with the game line, right? So the first half money line is off the game money line. The first quarter money line is commensurate. So if you have an angle, whether it be substitution patterns driven or something like that, then there are edges, small, albeit with the points, but you might get an extra half point, kind of like the Minnesota T-Wolves, right? Like I was talking about, that first quarter is based on the first half's based on the game. But if I think they're slow starters, so I do think the Hawks will be a slow starter tonight. So I do like the Suns first to 10. I still think, I just think there's still inflated number with the Suns because of who they have in the lineup. So I don't think there will be market correction enough throughout the rest of the year. I would fade them every single game.
And to all our degenerate followers, I mean, first to 10 in an Atlanta Hawks game could be in 90 seconds. So you would know if your bet cashes or not basically right after the jump ball. So that would be exciting.
It's like opening drive punt or not on the
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. I have a feeling, just like if you look at the make or miss playoffs for the Sixers, right? They had a terrible start, and then all these injuries. You couldn't even write a start that's worse than actually what happened, but they're still juiced to
Right.
make the playoffs. And I think the Suns, if you think about it, if they get into a tournament type situation like the playoffs, it's going to be really hard to beat a team with Devin Booker and Kevin Durant 4 times in 7 games. So I actually think they're going to be somewhat coasting throughout the regular season. They'll most likely make a move because this Beal situation is just blowing up in their face. But I think there's a lot of value in the Phoenix Suns, winning the Western Conference or getting to the conference finals, something like that. Because I don't know, I've just always been a proponent of buying low on teams, especially on teams that you were high on heading into the season.
Beal stinks. Like the team hates him, front office and players, based on my people that I've talked to. And he's untradeable. Not only does he have a non-trade clause, but I think they're a mess. Now, to your point, they have a good coach in Budenholzer. They do have star power. Some of the Suns' struggles is the injuries, right? They were 8-1, at one point with all three in the lineup. So the potential's there, and maybe guys like Ryan Dunn and some of these other young guys do get better over the season. I just don't think they have the connective tissue, if you will, for that
Mm,
locker room. I don't think they get along, and I don't think Durant, like, I don't think he's hungry anymore. Like, I really
mm.
don't. I think he plays in his comfort zone. Booker's the only guy who's like, I want to be in a foxhole with on that team.
This is a little
Um,
sidebar, but you know how a couple weeks ago when it was an interview with Steph, LeBron, and Kevin Durant, are we reaching to put Kevin Durant in those conversations? I know he's a great player. I know that you can make an
yes,
argument
we are.
he's the greatest scorer, most versatile scorer of all time. But in my opinion, Doug, he is not in the same tier as Stephen Curry and LeBron James.
No, and I was talking about it on Sunday watching Steph. Like, the guy's incredible. And I used to say, and I still do, he's Shaq on the perimeter, right? When he crosses half court, opposing defenses are fixated on him, and just like they were with Shaq at his prime. Like, the pressure he puts on defenses and things like that. I mean, Durant obviously to that degree, but the sustained and longevity of the success is what separates Steph and LeBron from Durant. Now, Durant's had some injuries and he was amazing for so long, but Steph's still doing this now. Obviously, LeBron, the all-time leading scorer, 40, still doing triple doubles. But Durant's like in that echelon, like one game, each guy in their prime, like Durant's up there, right?
Mm.
But I do think the duration of the other two's greatness is, and I just think Steph is, I mean, what he does to opposing defenses off the ball. I mean, he gets double teamed off the ball. It's just insane.
Yeah,
There's
and I mean,
nothing like it.
as a basketball fan, I know there's a lot of narrative right now about how the NBA is losing viewers. Steph Curry is one of those players that you can't hate because you can tell he cares so much about winning and losing every single night. So I mean, that's admirable for a fan to watch. Were there any
Yeah,
other
and
games?
he's not a defensive liability. Like, he's worked so hard on his game. He's
Yeah.
worked hard on being healthy. He's worked hard on adding strength. Obviously, his shooting has gotten even better all the time. Like, there's so much to like. The ugly game I thought you were going to take is the Raptors. Um,
Mm.
so I'm on them first quarter.
Oh yeah,
Now,
it's a big potential letdown spot for the Cavs. I am worried though. I am worried because Donovan Mitchell is out, so I don't like to.
oh, he is
Um,
officially out now.
yeah, he's officially out for load management or whatnot. But it's hard for me to back a team with their star player out just because what we've known the last few years.
Yeah, I will say that, and it's not a great spot for the Raptors. Like, they played last night on the road in New York, so they're traveling and stuff. But the Raptors starting lineup's okay actually. Now that RJ Barrett's back from injury,
Hmm.
excuse me. So they have good players, or some. Love Scotty Barnes, obviously. Um, but and I think Cleveland's got an edge in the second unit, so that's why I do like the first quarter. And this morning with Mitchell in the lineup was +5. That's a big number for a first quarter line.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but and it's the giant flat spots. It's not like they won, but they celebrated pretty hard beating the Thunder last night. Like,
They
guys on
did.
the court jumping up and down,
Yeah.
and so I that would be a first to 20, first to 10, bet the other side kind of thing. But you got to be careful, and this goes for the Suns game too. You got to look at who's going to win the jump ball for these first to tens, right? Mobley and Allen probably are going to win that jump ball over Pirtle. So that's an extra possession, right? So you just
Mm.
got, with the first to 10, you got to be careful with those situations. This is all part of the handicapping thing to keep in mind. First to 20, maybe the jump ball doesn't matter as much, but the first to 10, I think certainly does. Any other
Yes.
NBA? I got a few.
No, before we get into that, I just want to level set a little bit for those jumping on. Definitely check us out every week on Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern. That's 1 Central. That's 11 a.m. Pacific. If you go to the link, if you check us out on YouTube or on Twitter or X, you'll see links to me and Doug's free plays, free trial for the weekend. So Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 3-day free trial, which is great for you to get a taste of some of the angles and analysis that we put out to our people. And then the other thing I want to mention is next week or the week after, we might potentially be bringing on guests as well. So if you want anybody that you've been following for a long time and you want to see them on the screen and hear them, live in person, let us know and we'll reach out and we'll see if we could bring them on. So there's a couple, administrative announcements I wanted to make.
Yeah, and I speak for AC here. We're playing the long game. We're playing the long game for sure. So like I'm always down to do free trial and stuff like that. I stand by my work, my season line. I think I'm up 33 units this year in the NFL, 50 units both seasons. That's documented. Like on my site, I post my plays every day. Only finished 12 games above 500 in the circa million this year. Annoyed. Didn't follow up last year's check worthy performance, but it was a weird year. So all about moving forward, and I think you and I are both evolving still, even this late in our careers of a handicapper. But I feel like I have good people on my team, and I'm adding more and more as we move forward. So or fine tuning or adding more um, perfection or proficiency, I guess. So it continues to evolve. So hopefully, better days are ahead. And 2025, we've been hot too. So I'm all about the long game, like I said.
Beautiful. What other NBA spots are you looking into?
So people probably don't know a ton about the Portland Trailblazers. I like a guy named Tumani Kamara who starts now with Jeremy Grant hurt. Portland is playing. Who are they playing tonight? I'm blanking.
The
Oh, at
Mavericks.
Dallas, a
Yeah.
shorthanded Dallas team. So Kamara's over 9.5 points. Like he's going to get between like 11 and 15. Like he's just one of those guys. He's
Hmm.
lefty, attacks the rim, slithers to the rim. Got a nice game around the rim with the left-handed. Is a little bit more foreign to defend for the other team. So I just think it's a prop that hasn't really adjusted with Jeremy Grant out. Not a lot of people are betting Tumani Kamara's points prop, but I still think it's really good value. I wrote it last game. I'm on it again, and I'm not saying it's free money, but it's a really strong play in my eyes.
Yeah, I like it, especially coming off a game where Denny Avija had a really big scoring outburst last night. So you would expect a little regression there to the mean with him, which means more opportunities for the rest of the starters. And you're right, this is a name that people don't really know, right? If unless you're following Portland Trailblazers really closely, you've heard of Shaded Sharp and Anthony Simons and Aiton. But definitely not Tumani. And I think there's a really nice spot not only for him to do well tonight, but actually for Portland to get the cover. Mavericks coming off a national TV game against the Lakers where they were 8 or 9 point underdogs and won outright. So this is a potential flat spot for Dallas. They still don't have Luka. They still don't have Kyrie.
Okay, just a quick housekeeping note. It is confirmed that Ben Caro is not going to return until Friday for the
Okay.
Orlando Magic, which makes sense that the over under was coming down to 199.5. But yeah, that was a big win for the Mavs. I had a money line parlay that day. That's what cost me. It's just crazy.
Oh man.
Because the Lakers are like 13-2 against under 500 teams or whatever. Like, and then obviously Dallas, that version of Dallas, I would classify as under 500. So, they usually kind of pad stats against the bad teams, but no, not that game.
So that means Banchero is gonna come back tomorrow night against the Bucks. So he's gonna bypass Ant Man and play Giannis. I mean, the NBA is there's no easy wins in the NBA, man. That's a tough matchup.
No, they're not. Question for you as quick. We have 15 minutes to go. Let's look ahead to the NFL
Yep.
weekend. Anything jumping out in your eyes?
So I am very close to this guy named Marcus Mosher. Shout out to Marcus, who's on X. He does a lot of analysis for the Steelers, the Raiders, and the Cowboys. He used to work for Pro Football Talk. So very, very sharp guy. He lives in Pittsburgh, and so we were going back and forth about that Pittsburgh Baltimore game, and it's a really hard game for me to really nail down, Doug, because Pittsburgh has had really good turnover luck all season long. Start of the year where they were on fire, Justin Fields 4-2, Russell comes in, he continues, and they're on fire. Then they play real competition, right? The last 5-6 weeks of the year, and they were not good at all. So this game here at 9.5 is really, I think if it hits double digits, this is where I'm at right now. If Baltimore gets up to -10, to me, it would be a Baltimore read. Right now, if it's gonna stay under, the key number of 10, 9.5, even 9 at some places, I think it's a Pittsburgh read, and not only a Pittsburgh read. I think some Mike Tomlin voodoo is gonna happen in that game where the Steelers might potentially win outright. What are your thoughts?
So I know a couple math guys who are on the money line of the dog, like Steelers, because it's just
Yep.
the variance and they kind of the voodoo is right. You're right. And let's not forget Russell Wilson had that fumble inside the 5 in their last meeting. Otherwise, that game plays out a lot differently. I have two approaches to this game. So I think the human element of how things ended last year with the Ravens, they're somehow um, aborting the run did not make a lot of sense,
Mm-hmm.
right? That no one was like, why would they do? So I think they're just going to run the heck out of the ball because that's their bread and butter. That's what got them here. But I like Lamar passing yards under. I think it's like around 220. Now the problem is there's guys always open, and he's evolved every single year, and he's such a pure quarterback at this point of his career that does concern me a little bit. But Zay Flowers is out officially for the weekend, and it could be one of those just slobber knocker Steelers Ravens game, and 220 maybe it lands like 205, 189, those kind of games where maybe it's a deep pass and it's in pass interference, so they get the yards, and maybe Lamar rips off a 50-yard run here and there, and maybe the Steelers move the ball and it's a low scoring game. So I'm on the under in the passing yards as a play. Nothing huge, but that's a play. I like the Ravens first half. It's 6 at some shops. Steelers kind of suck in the first half. Um, they like cousin Sal. Shout out to cousin Sal, America's favorite gambler. Like his big thing most of the season was betting the double result. Like whoever the Steelers were playing, they'd bet them to win the first half and then the Steelers to win the game, and it was like
Mm.
cashing 350 every game. So I think the Ravens come out popping. I think Tucker's back, so to speak. I think he's resolved his issues. Now Boswell's, he's the best kicker in the game right now. Maybe Aubrey, but in the
Yeah,
playoffs
you
at least.
can't. Don't leave out Brandon Aubrey.
I don't know, man. Every time the Steelers line up for a field goal, it's automatic, especially in the wind and the cold and that
True.
weird stadium. But I think the Ravens Saturday night, there's something off with this Pittsburgh team. I agree with you with the Tomlin voodoo; it's there, but this team's kind of its best days were behind him this year.
It's interesting to watch Tomlin kind of evolve. I think you and I have the same temperature when we discuss Tomlin because he's been ultra conservative for basically 15 years of his career. And then you see points where he makes decisions to go for it on fourth, and he's
Right?
uncomfortable. That is
Very.
against his entire being, entire DNA. And this past week, where they went for fourth and they didn't get it right before the first half. Those are the moments where I think Tomlin's gonna start second guessing himself, and you're gonna see a Baltimore team where they've always had a really hot start, which I get with your first half, and then Harbaugh. I think there's a stat earlier this season where he has the most double digit comeback losses. Like they're up by double digits and they end up losing the game by anyone in the last like 10 years as head coach, which is insane to think about because that team's been so good. Um, so yeah, like it's almost kind of storybook where a team like Baltimore starts off hot and a team like Pittsburgh starts off slow. So that completely makes sense to me. I'm gonna lay off for now. I think Lamar Jackson under passing yards does make a lot of sense as well. Especially, this is their fourth or third time playing against each other this season. They potentially should know each other really well. What are your thoughts on that early game? I know we've mentioned Houston and D'Amico Ryans is like a fade team, but this is in Houston. This is against a Chargers team that kind of wavered towards the end of the season.
I think you throw all that out. Texans have been pretty good at home, by the way, anyways. But this is a fade of an LA sports team. I mean, what's going on with the wildfires and everything? There's no part of me wants to bet on the Chargers or Rams, and I'm fading both of them. Someone I was texting with an odds maker about the Laker game tonight before it was canceled or postponed, and he's like, "No, I like them at home. Like it'll be an emotional night." I'm just like, dude, this is ongoing. Like if there was a death in the organization, something like
Mm-hmm.
that, I can see it galvanizing a locker room, emotional, all that stuff. This is a ongoing tragedy that's a logistical nightmare and draining. And on top of that, it's moving. So there's constant stress. Like this was not an isolated situation. It's, something that happened and then it's now we're in sort of the mourning phase and recovery phase. Like the wind could move it to their area tomorrow.
Yeah.
So, I mean, look at what the Clippers did last night on the road. They got just blown out and they said their minds are elsewhere. So when you talk
Yeah,
about a football
Kawhi
game,
had to lead the team. He left the
yeah,
team to,
when you talk about a
his family.
football team, that think about the prep that goes in all week, the reviewing game film,
Yeah.
players. And I talked to when I was at ESPN, I talked to NFL guys. They're like, "Oh man," I tell my wife like, "Don't talk to me during playoff week. I am focused. You deal with it. You deal with it all. Like I'm not home. I'm there early. They're at the facility. They're training. All this stuff." Well, what happens when there's just stuff like this, life-changing events going on? And if it's not you, it's your relatives. If it's
Yeah.
not that, it's neighbors. There's so much going on that it's a like organizational nuisance at best, right? But it's also traumatizing. It's also draining. I just don't know how the Chargers mentally can be preparing for a game, let alone playing in a game
And
on
this
Saturday.
is this if you look at the Los Angeles geography, this is where they live. This is Pacific Palisades, Malibu, Santa Monica, Calabasas. This is like exactly where, these football players and celebrities live. So they are definitely being impacted. It's not a fire that's 100 miles away. This is literally at their doorstep.
And it could be tomorrow. Like my mom lived in the Hollywood Hills. Early in the week, Hollywood Hills was unaffected. A day or so later, it's affected. There was an evacuation, and then this morning it got canceled. So
Mm,
the way the wind is blowing and stuff, everyone's you know you know part of this issue.
yeah.
So I just don't see how anyone can play a football game. I mean, we've seen this in the past in the NFL preseason around hurricane season. Now it's the NFL preseason, but teams got like blown out because they're worried about their homes. This is not. This goes on beyond their safety of their family. It's very crazy. And I'm gonna fade the Chargers. Sorry, the Rams on Monday as well. I don't know how they're gonna play home game. They may move to Phoenix, but it's just the whole thing is just crazy.
Yeah. Okay, so you're gonna
So
be on
so
Houston.
yeah, I mean it's interesting from a football standpoint, but I just don't think you can look at it in a vacuum. I just think this is part of it and this trumps it. But even still, I think the football component, like the Texans, remember they won last year as a home dog in the playoffs. I wouldn't bet against them. I think they play pretty well at home and all things considered.
Yeah, Houston +3 at home. That means most likely you're thinking they're gonna win outright, right? So would you go money line here, or you just take the points?
No, I think we're going to see a lot of field goals and stuff. But again, that's without the LA variable. So
Mm,
probably, I would say alt line like -3.5 or something like that.
interesting. All right, so
Where
we
you get
do
a lot
have
of
three
depth.
games. We have three games on Sunday: Denver, Buffalo, Green Bay, Philadelphia, and Washington, Tampa Bay. We only have a couple minutes left, Doug. Which game do you want to dive into?
So I'm only on the early game. The other two I'm like passing. But I like Buffalo. I think they open up the
Me
can.
too.
Denver, like kind of like a smoke and mirrors kind of season. They
Yeah.
racked up a lot of empty wins, a lot of empty calories on this team. They're not that good. Now, I said earlier, quarterbacks can improve, and Bo Nix certainly has, and he's a veteran of college, so he's not a total newbie as a rookie this year. But Denver doesn't do what like the Achilles heel is to Buffalo. Buffalo, you have to run on them, and you can run on them, but Denver doesn't really run. So I think Buffalo is gonna, and their defense isn't that good, so Buffalo is gonna be able to throw all over it. And I like the Bills. I like the Bills, and I do think a Bills Ravens money line parlay -200 is very hard to lose.
The two MVP frontrunners. I like that. There is a stat out there, and I don't have it exactly on me, but rookie quarterbacks making their first start in the NFL playoffs is pretty much a fade. So you're looking at
Yeah.
Bo Nix here, and you're looking at Jaden Daniels against the Tampa Bay Bucks. So those are some of the looks that I'll be diving into as well. Was there any final thoughts, Doug, or anything you wanted to mention?
Yeah, I mean, I said Minnesota is a big play for me. Again, the LA thing, and especially if it moves. So check the house rules. But Minnesota money line right now -118. Like, I don't know how you can bet the Rams right now. And it's also something to keep in mind. My favorite play of the weekend is the first quarter of that game under 9.5. Rams are like not like they're the second worst team scoring points in the first quarter of this entire season. So just think about it, like 31st of 32. you get a punt, like you're guaranteed to get a punt or something like that. Minnesota we saw what happened in their last game with the Lions. Like they're going to do everything to build Darnold's confidence, right? So this is a bubble screen, dump off, swing
He
passes.
was so bad in that game.
Sort of. He did.
Yeah.
But remember, if Jefferson doesn't drop that second down and goal pass
Mm,
that he dropped as a touchdown, we don't have the third missed throw. It's a different game. And
yeah.
but Minnesota's obviously much better playing from ahead. Okay, they're going to try to get the leader. Like Minnesota first quarter money lines -110. I really like that play too. But I just think they're going to do a lot of slump buster passes, right? Check downs, passes in the flat, swing passes. And the Rams defense has gotten a lot of better this year with those young guys, right?
Yeah.
So, I think it's going to be a 7-0 first quarter, 3-0 first quarter kind of thing. And like for what it's worth, the Vikings have already made this trip. They've already played at the Rams. So the novelty, not that that's an intimidating stadium and crowd, but they've done this road trip before. They have some swagger. They're going to try to get that swagger back. And that's even if they go to LA and face the Rams, but maybe it's Phoenix. But either
Yeah, if
way,
they go to Phoenix, Doug, do you think that impacts one team more than the other?
I think it impacts the Rams.
Mm,
I think it does. It's just another like barrier for the logistics, right? Part of home field advantage is not just the crowd and all that and the weather for some teams that have it. It's the comfort of the routine. It's sleeping in your own bed, things like that. Driving, like not having to travel. Now, travel's easy and communication's easy on the road, so the crowd noise isn't that bad. But it's routine. It's being in your normal routine as part of the home field advantage. Now, it's not that big. Like talking to some of the more sophisticated math guys, like Arrowhead and Orchard Park in January, snow is like 1.3. It's no longer 3 point spread. It's like 1.3, and like the low end is like SoFi is like 0.6, right?
yeah.
Um, Now the Vikings don't have a huge fan base, so it's not like the Cowboys are playing at the Rams, where the Cowboys would have more fans. But it's also not the Jaguars either. Like there'll be a decent Vikings representation, but I don't think there's gonna be any fans because of the crowd, and I think it'll be in Phoenix anyway. This could be a COVID type, situation with the crowd. Now hopefully things are calm by Monday, but that's wishful thinking potentially.
Yeah, it
Um,
potentially could just be a bunch of local Arizona people going to the game and not
right.
diehard Minnesota fans. Yeah, that's interesting.
But I do think the play calling for Minnesota will be impacted by how last week went with Darnold. They want to get Darnold back on track. I think the defense will pose problems for Stafford and something, what Flores is going to do with the blitzes and all that. And I think we're going to have a low scoring game, but I think we really are going to have a low scoring first quarter. So I like under 9.5 -05. I
Mm,
like Minnesota first quarter money line -110. And I like the Vikings on a big play to take a position because I think I'll play for a middle. But I think the Vikings get the lead early.
mm, great.
You didn't think my best bet of the week would be a first quarter under, would it?
Yeah, you're on first quarter, and the other favorite you had is the first to 10. First to 10
Yeah,
Suns
Suns.
in Atlanta. Yeah. I wish I had those opportunities, man. Mine is all sides and totals and maybe a couple of player props, but that's about
Yeah, you
it.
got to find your way to the nearest border,
Yeah. Or
get the
just move to
DraftKings
Vegas, right?
or that. I like that. I like your thought process there.
All right, you want to close this out, Doug?
Yeah. All right. Good stuff. Again, as Albert said, go check us out on the links, the DubClub, and all that good stuff. And we'll be back here next week, 2 p.m. Eastern, as well on DCTV. And where we're going to be looking to bring in some guests as well, where our DMs are open. So feel free to recommend some people as well.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.